Hi, I'm Ned Kramer, Editor-in-Chief of Architect Magazine, the official magazine of the American Institute of Architects. And I'm joined today by Kermit Baker, Chief Economist for the American Institute of Architects, for the AIA's Economic Forecast and Update First Quarter 2015. Hi Kermit, how are you?
Ned, great to be here with you again.
Always a joy, always a pleasure. Your winter's going well, I hope?
Yes, so far.
Very good. So, how have things been? What's the latest news in the kind of general economy?
Well, we ended 2014 in pretty good condition. As our viewers can see on our first slide, gross domestic product, the broadest measure of our economy, increased a little bit in 2014 over 2012 and 13 levels. And I think that's even a little misleading because the first quarter of last year was very weak. So the second, third, and fourth quarters, we were seeing growth in the 4% range, really very healthy levels. So it looks like we're going to be about 2.5% or so for the year when we get final numbers in. The consensus is probably stronger growth for 2015, probably 3% or so. So some good solid momentum finishing up 2014 there and heading into 2015. Some of the other indicators I think confirm that. We're seeing strong job growth and payrolls, close to 3 million last year. That's a really healthy number. 3 million growth in payrolls was enough to bring our unemployment rate nationally down below 6%, a very healthy number. Yeah, we're seeing better numbers on business confidence. We're seeing strong stock market numbers. Housing starts finally got back over 1 million again. A long ways to go still, but an important threshold. So yeah, I think really on all the major indicators of the health of our economy, we're moving in the right direction.
How about the stock market? How's the stock market been doing?
Stock market obviously has been at record levels, at or near record levels, but incredibly volatile. A lot of nervousness about what's going on. You know, strong stock market levels indicate that corporate profitability is strong, so businesses are healthy, but nervous about what's going on internationally. Even the decline in oil prices recently, which should be considered good news, got some folks concerned about, investors concerned about underlying stock prices. So just, you know, volatility, I think, is really the watchword in terms of monitoring trends in the stock market.
And one of the data points on the slide shows that business confidence is up. Does consumer confidence match that kind of level?
Consumer confidence is at least as strong as business confidence. Yeah, we're seeing consumer confidence levels really back to their pre-downturn levels, so back to levels we were seeing in 2006 and 2007.
Oh, that's incredible.
So good solid numbers. You know, the spending is not quite as strong as you'd expect, given those high consumer confidence numbers, but I think people are feeling more comfortable with where their own personal financial situation is going, as well as where broader trends in the economy are headed.
So how about architecture firms themselves? Are they feeling the same lift as, say, consumers and CEOs?
Yeah, architecture firms are beginning to hire again. They're starting to see better conditions. We just recently polled a sample of architecture firms to see what their concerns were for 2015, kind of what's on their worry list. And we saw a lot of things that we traditionally see, an uncertain economy and concerns about a lot of competition for projects. But we also saw some things that we haven't seen recently, some indications that the economy is firming, but creating a new set of problems. So, for example, very high on the list, as our viewers can see, is managing the costs of running a firm. Things like rents, things like technology and software costs, health costs, insurance that they need or really generally carry are all going up. And I think in this tight margin environment, that's creating problems. We're also seeing concerns about staffing, finding staff, maintaining competitive salaries. Again, that has not been a concern at architecture firms over the last 3 or 4 years. So, a healthy sign, I think, that things are getting better, but a new problem that firms are dealing with.
Does that mean potentially that architects who, say, were laid off during the soft economy have left the profession if there's a kind of tight labor pool?
Well, yeah, a curious situation. Payrolls at architecture firms nationally are down 60,000, or were down 60,000 at the trough of the market from where they were before the downturn. We've gained back 10,000 of those, so really only a small share. So, yeah, I think the question is, where are those other 50,000 employees at architecture firms, and what happened to them? And a very good share are probably not coming back to the profession, moved on to other occupations. The staffing issues that most architecture firms are concerned about are not entry-level positions, which there does seem to be an abundant supply of, but really more experienced staff, someone that can manage the design of a project, or can potentially do some marketing for the firm. And those are in short supply, and those are obviously positions that are very difficult to create overnight. Need some time to develop those. So that's, I think, when they're talking about salaries and identifying qualified staff, I think it's really in this 10, 15, 20-year experience level where they're having difficulties.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
One other issue I wanted to talk about was ownership transition issues, and I think that's a reflection of the increased concentration of older staff at firms. With the downsizing we've seen, a lot of those were younger staff, so architects have gotten a lot older on average as a profession. A lot of them are thinking about retiring now. A lot of them would like to get back some of the equity they put in their firm. Most firm principals that were thinking about retiring didn't see the last 3 or 4 years as a good time to do that.
They decided to delay.
They decided to wait for conditions to get better, where some value would come back to the firm. But then a lot more now, I think, are thinking about that. So we have an aging architecture staff, where an increasing number of principals are thinking about transition issues, and I think that's going to continue to be a problem moving forward.
Okay, interesting. Putting an even tighter clamp on people with experience. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what about Billings?
Our Billings index, as our viewers can see, has been really quite strong recently. It's been positive virtually every month this year, and the numbers we're seeing most months are in the 52, 53, 54 range, as opposed to the 50 to 51 range we were seeing a year or two ago when we were seeing some positive numbers. So, very healthy signs. Great third quarter of 2014. Just a little bit softer in the fourth quarter. But I think we're heading into 2015 on good, solid momentum. A lot of activity going on. I think firms are very comfortable with the work they have in-house, the backlogs they have. Now start thinking about less about day-to-day sort of finding projects, and more about developing longer-term leads and things like that, which is again a very healthy sign.
And what about sector by sector? I know there was sort of weakness in the institutional sector last time we spoke, for instance.
Well, like most construction cycles, this has sort of been unfolding piece by piece.
Yeah.
Starts on the residential side very late, but at architecture firms it started on the residential side. Started seeing strong numbers from residential architects beginning about 3 years ago. Okay. They've maintained at very healthy levels. A lot of that has to do with the strong multifamily market. Architects are very involved in multifamily activity, and that's been probably the strongest construction sector over the last few years. Second sector to unfold was the commercial industrial sector. Started seeing stronger numbers there a couple of years ago. Not as strong as on the residential side, a little more up and down, a little more volatility, but reasonably healthy numbers. And then the last piece to fall into place was institutional. Yep. Institutional billings are huge. 50% of billings at architecture firms are for institutional projects, healthcare, education, things like that. And through the middle of 2014, we were not seeing any movement there. They continued to be negative. But when they turned quickly. Someone flipped a switch, and we've seen good, solid numbers for the last 6 months coming out of the institutional sector. Good head of momentum, head of steam moving into 2015. Looks like the last piece of the puzzle, the last piece of the construction sector has fallen in place, and we can expect to see, I think, really institutional, commercial, industrial, and residential all show positive numbers moving through 2015.
And you mentioned something flipping the switch. What was that something, or what?
You know, it's really not clear, other than it was time. I think a lot of pent-up demand there. A lot of you think about the sectors, education. Really, secondary schools, a big sector there, and it was local governments that were very nervous about taking on new construction programs, passing bonds and things like that, with their property tax base as weak as it was with the decline in house prices. Those have begun to come back. We're starting to see revenues, the coffers fill up again. I think a lot of local governments decided, that they had the students. Now was the time to move ahead with these projects. And as I said, kind of surprisingly, it all sort of happened at once. So we started to see a lot of these kick in at the same time.
And any regional variances when it comes to that kind of final leg of recovery? Yeah,
and that's a little more concerning, I think, because we're not seeing even economic conditions across the country. The South, particularly the South Central states, are doing extremely well. That's been up until recently largely a function of the energy base, the oil base in those regions. The West, a little slow in getting building up speed, but now numbers very strong coming out of the West region. Midwest has hung in pretty well. The weakness is coming out of the Northeast, and for reasons that aren't entirely apparent. It's a region of the country that's doing reasonably well, but architecture firms in that region have been reporting weak conditions the last 3 or 4 months. Hoping that turns around, not seeing any fundamental reason for that weakness there, but a little bit disconcerting when we have now seen 3 or 4 months of weakness.
Well, the downturn last spring, or last winter, everyone seemed to want to blame the weather. Any weather issues this time around?
Love to blame the weather again. I'm not sure in the fourth quarter of last year that weather was really that much of a factor. So we're going to have to blame someone else for that one, I guess.
Okay. Can't blame Mother Nature. So what's the outlook for the first quarter and beyond?
Well, as our viewers can see, Ned, on our consensus construction forecast slide, and these are numbers that are just in from our panel of experts that provide us with their outlook for construction activity for 2015 and 16. Looks like we're going to see some pretty good numbers coming in the days ahead and the quarters ahead. So on the overall non-residential building activity, sort of high single digit, 7%, 8%. In 2015, and very similar numbers in 2016. On the commercial side, hotels, offices, retail facilities, looks like we're going to be in the double-digit range again, both in 2015 and 16. Those numbers have been very strong recently, so not too much of a surprise where they're continuing. This upturn we talked about in billings at institutional architecture firms look like they're going to translate into more institutional construction activity. So our consensus panel is calling for mid-single-digit growth this year and next year. So this is in contrast to 2014, a decline in construction spending for institutional buildings. So finally, sort of 5 years into this economic recovery and a couple years into this non-residential building recovery, we're finally seeing some momentum on the institutional side. As I said, a huge sector for architecture firms, a huge sector for the construction industry, building product manufacturers, product dealers, construction workers. So seeing that sector come back is really critical to a more balanced non-residential building recovery.
As you said before, it sort of was the missing piece of the puzzle in our recovery.
And unfortunately a big piece too. So we really need this one to see a more full-blown recovery. And it really looks like we're going to see it. The forecasters are optimistic. Architecture firms are telling us already that these projects are on their drawing board. So seems like a pretty much a done deal that we're going to see better numbers coming there.
Well, amen Amen to that. Like to hear that. So a very positive, I would say. Can we just firmly call this a positive update?
I think we can. I think we're coming into 2015 with some momentum behind us, and it looks like we're going to see a Mother Nature permitting a good first quarter, and that should continue into stronger growth throughout the year.
Well, thanks for bringing the good news. That's terrific, Kermit. Thank you very much.
Ned, pleasure to join you today.
This is Ned Kramer and Kermit Baker signing off. Have a pleasant first quarter 2015.